Rain tapped softly against the tall glass windows of the mansion as Adrian Cole stood motionless in his dimly lit study, staring at a photograph he had memorized 1,000 times. His late wife's smile still felt alive in that frame, warm, effortless, full of life. But the house around him had long gone silent. Silence had become his only companion, until she arrived. Her name was Elena. The nanny he had hired for his 5-year-old daughter, Lily. At first, she was just another employee, quiet, polite, and professional. But over time, something about her presence began to disturb the carefully controlled world Adrian had built. It wasn't just the way Lily laughed more now, or how the once lonely child clung to Elena like she was her entire world. It was deeper than that. It was the way Elena seemed to understand pain without speaking of it. The way her eyes held stories she never told. And most unsettling of all, the way she would disappear every evening without a word. Adrian wasn't a man who believed in coincidences. As the owner of a multi-billion-dollar empire, he had built his life on logic, precision, and control. Yet, Elena didn't fit into any of those categories. Every evening at exactly 6:30 p.m., she would gently say goodbye to Lily, gather her modest belongings, and leave through the front gate, never asking for a ride, never lingering, never explaining where she went. It was none of his business, or at least, that's what he kept telling himself. But curiosity has a way of turning into obsession, especially when it hides something you can't explain. And tonight, as thunder rolled across the sky and the rain grew heavier, Adrian made a decision he never thought he would. He grabbed his coat, stepped into his car, and followed her. From a distance, he watched as Elena walked down the quiet street, her small figure almost blending into the shadows. She didn't take a taxi. She didn't check her phone. She simply walked. The millionaire who could command private jets and luxury chauffeurs found himself driving slowly behind her, careful not to be seen. Minutes turned into nearly an hour as she moved further away from the polished neighborhoods into areas Adrian had never visited, places where streetlights flickered and buildings looked worn by time and struggle. His grip on the steering wheel tightened. Why would someone like her come here? The question echoed in his mind as she finally stopped in front of a small, run-down building. Adrian parked a few meters away, his heart beating in a way that felt unfamiliar. This wasn't business. This wasn't strategy. This was something else entirely. Something personal. He stepped out of the car, the rain instantly soaking his coat, and quietly approached the building. Through a cracked window, he saw something that made him freeze. Inside, Elena was kneeling beside an elderly woman lying on a worn-out bed. Her voice, soft and trembling, filled the small room as she carefully fed the woman with a spoon. There was no hesitation, no disgust, no impatience, only pure care. The kind of care Adrian hadn't seen since his wife was alive. But that wasn't all. A few seconds later, a group of children ran into the room, laughing, calling Elena's name with excitement. She turned to them with a smile Adrian had never seen before, one that was brighter, freer, and untouched by the quiet sadness she carried at the mansion. She hugged them, checked their homework, and handed out small food packets from her bag. Adrian's breath caught in his throat. This wasn't just a nanny. This was someone living a completely different life after leaving his home every day. As the realization began to settle, Adrian felt something shift deep inside him. All this time, he had been watching her, but he had never truly seen her. Suddenly, the fragile wooden door creaked open, and one of the children stepped outside. Adrian instinctively moved back into the shadows, but it was too late. Elena followed, her eyes locking onto his figure almost instantly. For a moment, time seemed to stop. Rain poured between them, heavy and relentless, as the truth hung in the air, he had been caught. Elena, Adrian's voice was low, uncertain, stripped of its usual authority. But she didn't respond right away. Instead, she looked at him, not with anger, but with something far more powerful. Disappointment. You followed me, she said quietly, her voice steady despite the storm around them. Adrian didn't deny it. For the first time in years, he had no explanation, no excuse, no carefully crafted response. He simply stood there, exposed, not as a powerful millionaire, but as a man who had crossed a line he didn't fully understand. I needed to know, he finally admitted. Elena took a slow breath, glancing back at the small building behind her before returning her gaze to him. And now you do, she said. But Adrian shook his head slightly. No. I don't, he replied, his voice softer than ever. Because what I see doesn't make sense. You work all day, and then you come here, to take care of people who aren't even your responsibility. Why? For a moment, Elena was silent. The rain softened, as if the world itself was waiting for her answer. Then she spoke, words that would change everything. Because no one took care of me when I needed it the most. The sentence hit Adrian harder than anything else he had seen that night. In those few words, he felt the weight of a past she had never shared. A past filled with pain, loss, and survival. And suddenly, all the pieces began to come together, the quiet strength, the hidden sadness, the unconditional care she gave to Lily. You think money fixes everything, Elena continued, her eyes searching his. But it doesn't. Some wounds, they don't heal with wealth. They heal when someone shows up for you, even when they don't have to. Adrian felt his chest tighten. For years, he had buried his own grief under layers of success, believing that providing for his daughter was enough. But standing here, in front of a woman who gave everything she had to strangers, he realized something painful. He had been present, but not truly there. I'm sorry, he said quietly. Elena didn't respond immediately. Instead, she studied him for a moment before stepping aside, opening the door behind her. Then come inside, she said. And see what really matters. Adrian hesitated, but only for a second. Then, for the first time in years, he stepped into a world that had nothing to do with power, status, or control, and everything to do with humanity. And that night, the millionaire widower who thought he had lost everything began to discover what he had been missing all along. If this story touched your heart and made you reflect on what truly matters in life, don't forget to subscribe to the channel for more powerful and emotional stories that can change the way you see the world.